Today we start with the sesshin reminders for the coming period. In fact, this is something so basic, so definitively valuable, because once you really allow these reminders to become your understanding, that will transform your life. And these both reminders are in a way from different sides interconnected. The first reminder is connected with the well-known statement of Socrates, where he says, "I know only one thing that I don't know." Nobody feels hurt by that. Everybody finds it maybe even amusing. But it's not enough in repeating that. It doesn't become your understanding. You have to consider it. What does he mean with it? What is the meaning of the statement? What is, to put it more directly, what is my knowledge? Because all our judgments, all our ways of reacting are based on our knowledge. To understand what is knowledge, how do we acquire knowledge, and what is its reality? Can that be the real basis? Can that be considered as absolute? You have to question each time you are judging anybody, each time you are going into some kind of comparison, competition, conclusion, and going into reacting. If you can bring this awareness, what is my knowledge? Do I know it really? Is it absolutely so? To just add one aspect to it, it's very interesting to see that in the biblical way of putting it, Adam and Eve was in paradise. And they came out of the paradise, or they were sent out of the paradise, so to speak, in the relative level, because they were eating the fruit of knowledge. It's interesting, it's a very poetic, significant indication for anybody who is ready to consider it deeply. To question the basis of our knowledge, to question the basis of our judgment, not only as a philosophical thought, but in day-to-day living, from situation to situation, in each encounter. So to make it a little bit more practical, I say at least 5 times a day do that. Because once you are bringing your attention to these basic factors, you will slowly come to realize, yes, my knowledge is so relative. And again, don't believe me. It's not enough when you believe anybody. But don't disbelieve me either. And this I often say that should be your consideration, and out of your consideration, when the insight, understanding arises, then it's not believing anybody, it's not agreeing with anybody, it is your understanding of the nature of the reality. And we are capable to understand the possibility and limitation of our mind, of our conditioning, of our knowledge. How much the logical, rational mind can grasp. And especially when you see that the whole knowledge is based on a relative process. That means you always need to have some kind of standard to judge anything. One says this is good because we have some concept of what is bad. We say that this is dark, and that is how we understand light. When there is no polarity to compare with, you cannot define anything. The definition is coming through the projection through our mind, and the knowledge which we bring out of it. That again is based on a conditioned idea what we have developed to as to who we are, what we are. So the so-called I, whom we identify with, judges based on these projections, on the standards and values which one has collected. So you start, as you go deeper, you start seeing from where does these standards and values come. And then you may start realizing that these are also not absolute. Certain things which were at certain point considered good, as time changes, it has become not so sensible. Or certain things which were considered bad, as time changes, you see that it has become part of the normal life and everybody is seeing it differently. You can see it even in simplest things like fashion. If 40 years ago, 50 years ago, somebody would go with the kind of dresses which are being worn now, they will say, this person is horrible. How can she go around like that? Especially in women's fashion, you can see it more clearly because in women's fashion it is more visible. But now these things are very common and nobody, especially when you are exposed to it more often and when you are seeing it everywhere, it becomes part of the normality and nobody is making a fuss about it. So this is how our mental processes are going on. And you can see also with every area in human connections. For example, maybe 50 or 70 years ago, even here, the Catholics and Protestants, the evangelicals, they were kind of quite seeing themselves very separate. And if somebody from one of the Catholic or from the Protestants want to marry someone from another path, it was considered like, how can you do that? It's something strange. But now nobody thinks about such things. So you can see, it is not only in this, in more deeper areas of life, you can also see the knowledge and the judgments are very, very relative. At one stage of your life, you think that things are so easy. But as the body grows old and then you see that certain things which you were able to do with the slightest effort, now as the body goes older, it becomes big effort. You find it almost so difficult to take care of the simplest things. And then you realize, oh, it is not always the same. So it is important for us human beings in order to understand life more deeply and find the balance, find peace, and find the real basis of life, to become aware of this relativeness of all knowledge. And that can happen only when you start questioning, and conscious questioning. Not to come to some conclusions, but start questioning. What is the basis of my judgment? Is this knowledge which I am holding to, are these standards which I am holding to absolute? In the beginning it will be uncomfortable for you because it is taking away your whole idea of being sure about things, being absolute about things, the feeling of power, feeling of superiority. It all can get disturbed. But that is how you come to understand the truth. That is how you open yourself to the reality and not stay in the illusory projections of how it appears. So at least 5 times a day, take the initiative. Each time you are coming with your knowledge into judging, into comparing, into making conclusions, into making decisions, take some moments to question, to consider this knowledge, consider the basis of your judgment. At least, say, each time if you can take 3 to 5 minutes to be with it. It's not that you have to come to any conclusion. It's just that you question. This conscious questioning and taking time to bring awareness into this area, that is the most important thing. Because through that you start seeing slowly, a little deeper, a little clearer each time. And that is what at one point will become the right understanding when Socrates says, I know only one thing that I don't know. He's not saying it without deep consideration and questioning. It is a statement coming after a very deep, very insightful, very careful consideration of the nature of the reality. That is why when you consider it in your way and when it becomes your conclusion, not any belief, not agreeing with Socrates, I just bring his statement as a basis so that you have something to start with. But the point is that you consider the knowledge. Then your understanding changes. Then it becomes a basis for your being real, being authentic, being truly human. Because when you are not trapped in knowledge, something very significant starts happening. Your heart becomes more alive. Your deeper intelligence can come into the perception of the reality. And that is how you become, in a deep sense, human. And that is what allows you to live a life which is very peaceful, very grateful, very joyous, and recognize life for what it really is. Now the second reminder, which is interestingly coming from another side, which you have heard also in many ways, that it is important to allow life. It's important to surrender to the divine. It's important to, in German the word Hingabe is very valuable, but not as winning and losing. It is a way of not being trapped in one's usual way of labeling and being open to see what is life showing. So it is not saying yes and agreeing with everybody and resignating. It is on the contrary. You are alive, wakeful, present, and you use your knowledge, use your mind without being absolute about it. And this has to be very carefully understood because it can be very easily misunderstood. Hingabe, or this leaving it to the divine, is not resignating and just going in an irresponsible way in life. On the contrary, you remember that something deeper is there. And I need to bring that consideration of the deeper aspect of reality so that I'm not believing that the way it appears to me is absolute. And this is what gives you a different basis. But let me elaborate a little bit. In this context, you cannot force the so-called allowing life or leaving it to the divine approach from the head. And that is not what is asked for. But what you can do is bring your attention to consider the nature of the reality. You consider a flower, how it is there, from where it has come, where it gets its colors, and what is the reality of it. If you consider it few minutes, 5 minutes, just what is its reality? And not settle with some kind of explanations and analytical knowledge, but consider it. How come a seed which has not any big appearance, which looks like a piece of dirt, brings about a plant, sometimes a big tree, with fruits which are so tasty, with flowers which are so colorful, and some of the flowers which are so fragrant? From where does it all come? You start considering different aspects of life. You look at your finger and your capacity to move. You are able to touch things, you are able to grasp things, you are able to feel things. Or you look at a bird, an animal. You look into the eyes of a child. You look at the sunshine. You look at the rain. You look at the drinking water. And so consider different elements of life, elements of nature. And slowly, slowly, as you consider, you will deepen your feeling of the wonder, feeling of that it is all there, because ungraspable, deeply caring, playful, compassionate intelligence has made it possible that we all have all this. To bring another aspect of the gravity, we are sitting here, we feel comfortable, we don't feel any movement. But we are on a planet which is constantly turning around itself. We know that through the scientific developments, it has been proved. So it is turning around itself and turning around the sun. And yet we sit here and feel so at home, at ease. Everything seems so constant. The more you consider, the more you become aware. What a wonder you are surrounded with, within and without. You become aware of the nature of the reality, which is so magnificent, so valuable. That's why I say when you consider each time and allow it to deepen, it is not trying to force anything. It is just you consciously consider the simplest aspects of life, because otherwise, without taking this time to consciously consider, your mind is occupied with the mundane, pragmatic, practical things, which, whether you want it or not, whether it is relevant or not, engages your energy. But when you start taking few minutes, few times a day, and go deeper, you will realize that this is a wonder. And not because somebody else is telling you it is a wonder, it is because you start getting into the insight of it. You start recognizing it from your own inquiry. And that is why it is not a belief, it is not agreeing with somebody. And that is why it's also so valuable. Because nobody can take it away from you. And when you start recognizing the blessedness of life, the wonder of life, the care, the compassion, the love which is behind the whole creation, then you also start seeing that the paradox in life, what is called paradox, the polarities, the so-called good and the bad, so-called beautiful and the so-called ugly, everything has its place in this life process. It's not agreeing with anything, it is not trying to defend anything, but you start seeing how they are all playing together, how they are all interconnected. And as you deepen your understanding through your careful consideration, you come to realize the blessedness, the beauty. And out of that arises deep gratitude. And it brings the real peace in you because you see that you are at home. You are not here as a stranger. And the more you consider, the more you see how creation is, how everybody is created so unique, how there's nobody like you. And when it becomes your recognition, it becomes so deep, a magnificent insight. And that is the transformation which is not managed from anything else. It's a transformation coming from your initiative to understand the nature of the reality. So, also with the second reminder, take at least 5 minutes each time. In different encounters, in different moments when you have the possibility, every day, 5 times at least, to consciously consider the nature of its reality. Whether it is a flower, whether it is a cell, whether it is a drop of water, whether it is the wind, take time to consider and let it become a deepening process for you. And work with both these reminders and you will see that they are both supportive. They are very complementary. They are approaching from different sides to go beyond the logical entanglement in the conditioned knowledge and mind. It becomes the basis for you to understand, to transcend, and come home to your true self, your true being, and to awaken to the divinity, what is within and without. So work with it very honestly, very carefully, very courageously, patiently, and it will be very deeply valuable.